Social Security plays a crucial role in most Americans' retirement plans. In fact, 91% of current retirees report that Social Security is a source of income in their retirement. That insanely high number tells us how many rely on this stable, predictable income to help cover important expenses like housing, healthcare, and food. However, a lot of adults are under the impression that it's quickly running out and there won't be anything left for them. But is that really the case? I hear this line of thinking a lot among my millennial cohorts as well as younger generations. And while it's true that Social Security faces some serious challenges, the situation might not be as black and white as you think. Let's break down what's really going on, the 4 potential outcomes that I see, and how you can start preparing now. Because the choices that you make today will affect your finances both in the short term and long term, so it's important to understand the implications. When Social Security was established in 1935, the primary goal was to replace a portion of lost income due to retirement, disability, or death. Contrary to what some might think, it was never meant to be the sole source of retirement income and was expected to be a part of a broader 3-part retirement strategy. First, personal savings. Individuals were expected to save for retirement through personal savings and investments over their working years. Second, employer pensions. Many workers had access to pension plans provided by employers, which would offer additional income in retirement. Third, Social Security. This would provide a baseline of income, but it would be supplemented by the individual's savings and pensions to cover all retirement expenses. As we all know, pensions are basically non-existent for most of us younger working adults. The closest thing that we have to it is an employer match. So for us younger generations, this turns into a 2-part retirement savings strategy. Personal savings through 401ks, 403bs, 457s, and IRAs, along with Social Security. But with the constant talk about how Social Security is running out, it can give the illusion that there's not going to be any money left for people in their 40s and younger. That would mean that we're left to only count on personal savings. But I think this is the wrong assumption to make. To understand why that is, you first need to understand how it even works, because from what I've found, this is the part that most people do not get, which magnifies the whole doomerism thinking. It's funded half by employees and half by employers through our FICA taxes every time we get paid, which totals 15.3%. Of the 7.65% each side pays, 6.2% goes to the Social Security side of things, and here is how it's divided. OASI is the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, which is where the monthly Social Security payments are made from for people who are currently collecting it. The DI is the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, which is technically a part of Social Security, but for people who are disabled as well as their spouses and children. Even though both of these trust funds are considered to be a part of Social Security, they're each paid out of separate trust funds. There isn't any commingling of funds, and one fund cannot borrow from the other fund either. I want to stop here to point out a common misunderstanding. The government does not fund Social Security. It is funded by us and our employers through payroll taxes, the taxation of benefits, and interest earned on the money in the fund. The government's irresponsible spending in general has nothing to do with our current or future Social Security spending because they're not allowed to put their grubby little fingers inside this pot of money. The one benefit of this is that we know exactly where all of our money is going from the FICA taxes that we pay. It's not like other taxes paid to the government where it goes into some black hole and gets sent to other countries. Whoops, I don't think you're supposed to say that out loud. I mean, get sent to God knows where. Current 75-year projections show that we aren't going to have funding issues with the Disability Trust Fund, only the OASI Trust Fund. So we're going to ignore the DI side of things and only focus on the OASI side of things. Money from your taxes goes into the OASI Trust Fund, then Social Security payments are made out of this account. The trust fund has had a surplus of money for a very long time. For example, back in 2014, there was a surplus of about $374 billion. This year, we are down to about $200 billion. Think of this surplus like an emergency fund for Social Security. If the tax revenue coming in doesn't fully cover the amount needed to be paid out, then the difference comes from these reserves. When you hear that Social Security is running out of money, what people mean is that these reserves are slowly being used up. I reviewed every year since 1957, and it wasn't uncommon to see both surpluses and deficits depending on the year. The deficits were manageable because we had built up a large enough surplus over time, which helped cover them. But everything changed in 2010 when we've seen nothing but consistent large double and triple digit deficits every single year. The reason this started to happen is because it's the year baby boomers began retiring, which is why the large spike started. Deficits here and there aren't a huge deal because we've built up a nice little surplus over time. As with the personal emergency fund though, if we continue to spend more than we're taking in without doing anything about it, then it becomes a bigger problem. As of 2024, the OASI Trust Fund reserves are projected to become depleted in 2033, which means there won't be enough money coming in to pay the full benefit amount to people receiving Social Security. At that point, the Social Security Trust Fund would only be able to pay about 79% of scheduled benefits according to a 2024 report. That means retired workers with an average monthly payment of about $1,900 per month would only receive about $1,500 per month. Some of you might think, that's not bad. Okay, give me 20% of your pay right now. Let's see how you feel. The reported percent it'll be able to pay in 2033 will change from year to year since there are a ton of different factors that play into this that are difficult to forecast exactly. All you need to know is that it's going to be around 79% plus or minus a few percentage points. Help support my little dog Molly as well as this channel by hitting that like button. Now here's something a lot of people don't realize. Social Security operates in a way that's kind of like a Ponzi scheme. I understand that might sound extreme, so let me explain. In a traditional Ponzi scheme, you have early investors getting paid with money coming in from new investors. And as long as enough new money keeps coming in, everything looks fine. But the moment that flow of new investors slows down, the whole thing starts to fall apart because they can't pay the early investors at the same rate. And that's sort of what we're seeing with Social Security. When you pay into Social Security today, the money doesn't get set aside in some account with your name on it waiting for when you retire. Instead, that money goes right back out the door to pay benefits to the people who are already retired and collecting Social Security. So the system relies on a constant stream of new workers paying in to support those who are receiving benefits today. While Social Security is obviously a legitimate social program and not illegal like a Ponzi scheme, depending on who you ask, the structure shares the same fundamental challenges. This shortfall of money coming in can be chalked up to a few different reasons. First, birth rates have been steadily declining for decades. Fewer births translates to fewer workers paying into Social Security to support retirees. Right now, for every one person receiving Social Security benefits, there are 2.7 workers paying into the system and continuing to decline. Compare that to 1963 when there were 4.1 workers per retiree. As this ratio keeps shrinking, the system becomes increasingly strained. Side note, in my opinion, population collapse is one of the biggest crises that we're going to be facing, and I don't think it's talked about enough. If I had to guess, then I believe that we're going to see more and more of those Tesla-type robots in our everyday life in the coming years to help make up for this reduced population. To take it one step further, I think most households are going to eventually have one of these robots living with them and taking care of daily tasks. Now, unfortunately, robots, they ain't gonna be paying into Social Security like we do. When that happens, instead of me yelling at people to pay cash for their cars, I'm going to be yelling at them to pay cash for their humanoid robots instead of taking on debt to own one. In addition to a declining population, people are also living longer than ever before, and this trend is expected to continue as medical technologies improve. While this is great for those who can stay healthy, it also means Social Security has to cover longer benefit payouts. And then there is the income gap. In 2024, Social Security contributions are capped at an income of $168,600 and increases every year. So any money earned above that amount doesn't get taxed for the Social Security Trust Fund. While we've seen significant wage growth, especially in higher income brackets, Social Security hasn't kept up with the pace of that growth. This limits the amount of money coming in, even as the need for payouts continues to rise. All of these factors, fewer workers paying in, longer lifetimes collecting benefits, and limited funding from high-income earners creates kind of like a perfect storm that leaves the current system stretched a little too thin. To understand how this funding gap could affect the money in your pocket today, as well as in the future, I think it would be helpful to go through each trade-off and put some dollar amounts to each one 2021 so that you can start preparing now. I hesitate to call any of them solutions because it brings to mind something economist and philosopher Thomas Sowell famously said.
There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And whatever you do to deal with one of man's flaws, it creates another problem. But that you try to get the best trade-off you can get, and that's all you can hope for.
This idea perfectly captures the issue we face with Social Security reform. Each option has its own set of compromises that may fix one problem but create another. HealthView Services recently released a report detailing the cost of implementing various changes to address Social Security's funding problem. The report focuses on 4 groups of couples in 2 different income brackets who are either 10 or 25 years away from claiming Social Security benefits at age 65. On the far right of each group's data, you can see the projected lifetime benefits assuming there are no funding issues with Social Security. Knowing this number gives us a good baseline so we can understand how much life benefits will be cut based on 4 different reform proposals that are most likely. The first option is to do nothing. If this happens, then it'll eliminate 100% of the shortfall Social Security is facing. At that point, all benefits will be reduced by 21% in 2033 for everyone. Here are the inflation-adjusted dollar amounts each of these example couples would lose out on if nothing is done. For low or average income couples, the dollar loss would be small, but since they depend more on Social Security, the reduction would have a bigger impact on their retirement compared to others. Since this would leave a lot of retirees below the poverty line, I highly doubt politicians will go this route because it would straight up end their career. But just know that this is the worst case scenario. The next realistic reform would be to gradually increase the full retirement age by 2 months per year for people born in 1978 or later until the full retirement age reaches 68. If we use the past as any indication, based on how they rolled out the age increase back in 1983, this change is more likely to affect people 40 and younger because Social Security typically adjusts the retirement age for younger workers, not for people closer to retirement. So for us in this age category, there's a strong chance you'll need to wait longer to start claiming full benefits. But keep in mind that even though the full retirement age will increase, we'll still get 100% of our promised annual benefits, but because we start receiving them 1 year later, we'll actually get fewer years of payments. So the total lifetime benefits decrease, even though the amounts we receive per year stays the same. Based on my calculations, that would mean a cut in total lifetime benefits of roughly 7 to 8% if you start collecting at the new full retirement age of 68. If you are someone who decided to claim before that, then you would see an additional reduction in lifetime benefits. It looks like a report from a few years ago showed that the majority of retirees claimed Social Security before their full retirement age of 66. It's tough to say whether this was a good or bad idea for each of them because it depends a lot on your personal situation, but it doesn't seem to be as uncommon as you might think. This adjustment to full retirement age would only reduce Social Security's funding shortfall by 15%. So while it helps to extend the program's solvency, it won't fully solve the long-term funding problem. The next option is to raise the FICA tax rate, which is of course the payroll tax that both employees and employers pay, from 6.2% to 8% each. This tax hike would add a lot more revenue to the Social Security Trust Fund, but keep in mind that you'd have 1.8% less in your pocket today. Assuming wage growth is consistent with economic projections, here's an example of the additional amount these sample couples would pay into Social Security with this 1.8% tax increase for the noted number of years before claiming Social Security. One thing to mention here is that they'd probably phase in this increase over a number of years. So it's not like the year after they implement this change, you're going to be paid 1.8% more. On the bright side, raising the FICA tax rates would more than solve Social Security's funding problem. It would actually cover 102% of the shortfall, meaning it would eliminate the deficit entirely and even leave a little extra room to build up a surplus like we've had for many years in the past. As I mentioned earlier, right now Social Security only taxes income up to $168,600. any income above this limit isn't taxed by Social Security. The next proposal is to eliminate this earnings limit entirely for high-income earners. For example, someone earning $170,000 would pay the same Social Security tax rate as someone making $1 million, even though they both get the same Social Security benefits in return. This would generate a lot of extra revenue for the Social Security Trust Fund. For most people, including the sample group of couples or lower income earners, this change wouldn't affect them financially at all since their income doesn't reach this limit. But high-income earners would pay more into the system without receiving any additional benefits. By eliminating the earnings limit, Social Security would cover 70% of its funding shortfall, making it a major step towards fixing the program's financial challenges. 87% of Americans agree that Social Security must remain a top priority no matter the state of budget deficits. This strong feeling is consistent for men and women across generations, income levels, and political parties, which is good to see most people are united on this topic. More than half believe that increasing the Social Security tax rate is the way to go. As I said before, I personally don't mind this route as much because we know exactly where the tax increase is going, unlike other taxes we pay. Even though the ROI on Social Security tax is better for people earning less and worse for people earning more, I'm personally okay with this as long as they don't completely eliminate the maximum taxable earnings. Only 44% think that it should be funded through increasing the full retirement age, while 47% disagree, so the opinion on this is pretty split down the middle. If I was a betting man, what I think we'll see happen is a combination of full retirement age increase, tax increase, and possibly the maximum taxable earning limit increase a little more than usual. This is of course a complete guess, so I could be wrong, but what we do know is that something has to be done since the overwhelming majority says that this is a top priority. The timetable of when it will happen is up in the air, even though a large portion of the population wants something done sooner rather than later. While researching this video, I came across that the last time Social Security reform was approved in 1983, it wasn't finalized until just 6 months before the deadline. Now, hopefully, Congress doesn't wait until the last minute again this time, because delaying decisions only makes each trade-off much more expensive for us. One thing I'm pretty confident of is that, contrary to popular belief, younger generations like people in their 40s and younger should expect to receive Social Security when they retire. I think you're making a huge mistake assuming there isn't going to be anything left for you, because the evidence just is not there. Yes, it could be a reduced amount, but that doesn't mean that you should completely ignore this chunk of income when you're planning out how much you need for retirement. I am all for someone who wants to oversave during their working years, but at least run the numbers so you understand the potential trade-offs. It could be preventing you from allowing yourself to enjoy spending a little more money today. As I said before, all of the current data states worst case scenario, you should expect to receive between 75 and 80% of your current benefits. But if you want to be extremely pessimistic just to be safe, then cut it by something like 50% and adjust your retirement contributions accordingly. Go to the SSA.gov website, create an account, look at your projected monthly benefits, which are in today's dollars and will increase with inflation, then cut it by 50%. I also recommend using something like the do-it-yourself retirement planning tool that used to be called New Retirement, but has changed its name to Bolden. It's the planning software I personally use to make sure my financial future is on track. I'll have a link in the description to check it out and open an account, which does help support the channel at no extra cost to you. If you're someone who is okay with assuming $0 in future Social Security payments and are okay with saving extra during your working years, then I couldn't care less, because at the end of the day, it's your money and I'm not your daddy, so do what you want. If you want to know how to figure out the amount you need to save for retirement, then you can watch this video to your left next. Hit that like button before you go. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.